Well, the pressure is working. The pressure from Special Prosecutor Jack Smith on Donald Trump's associates and co-defendants and possible co-conspirators is working exactly as intended, which is very, very bad news for Donald Trump tonight. The star witness against Donald Trump, who we identified on this program Thursday night as Trump Employee 4, apparently flipped and decided to testify against Donald Trump after receiving a target letter from Special Prosecutor Jack Smith. Donald Trump has to be worried more than ever tonight that his associates will flip and start cooperating with Jack Smith as soon as they receive target letters from Jack Smith. Trump Employee 4 could start a stampede of Trump witnesses against Donald Trump in all of the criminal cases Donald Trump will be facing. CNN reported that Trump Employee 4, Yusil Taveras, received a target letter from Special Prosecutor Jack Smith after Donald Trump and Walt Nauta were indicted by Jack Smith in an espionage and obstruction of justice indictment. Now, imagine working at Mar-a-Lago and receiving a target letter from Jack Smith after you have watched your coworker, Walt Nauta, marched into a federal courthouse in Miami as a criminal defendant with Donald Trump. As a Trump employee working at Mar-a-Lago, no matter how much you worshipped or feared Donald Trump, when you watched him get arrested that day by Jack Smith, something should have happened to your confidence in Donald Trump's ability to protect you. The superseding indictment that Jack Smith filed on Thursday, adding more criminal charges against Donald Trump for his attempts to destroy evidence in the case, tells the story of two Trump employees who made two very different decisions in dealing with Jack Smith. Yusil Taveras, who's identified in that superseding indictment only as Trump Employee 4, clearly made the decision to cooperate with Jack Smith after watching his coworker, Walt Nauta, become a co-defendant with Donald Trump. And Carlos de Oliveira apparently decided not to cooperate with Jack Smith, and that ended up being added to the indictment as a co-defendant on Thursday. Carlos de Oliveira's life changed for the worse a year and a half ago when he was promoted from valet to the head of maintenance at Donald Trump's Florida residence. And it was thanks to that promotion that Donald Trump, 6 months later, asked Carlos de Oliveira to commit a crime for him, according to the superseding indictment. After the security surveillance video at Mar-a-Lago was subpoenaed by federal prosecutors, Donald Trump told Carlos de Oliveira to delete the video. Destroying evidence in that federal prosecutors have already subpoenaed is a very clear federal crime of obstruction of justice. The superseding indictment says de Oliveira told Trump Employee 4 that the boss wanted the server deleted. Trump Employee 4 responded that he would not know how to do that and that he did not believe that he would have the rights to do that. De Oliveira then insisted to Trump Employee 4 that the boss wanted the server deleted and asked, what are we going to do? It is very clear in that indictment that Trump Employee 4, Yusil Taveras, is the prosecutor's source for that conversation. Trump Employee 4 literally talked his way out of an indictment after receiving a target letter by explaining to Jack Smith exactly what was said to him and exactly what he said. And after Trump Employee 4 told that story, Carlos de Oliveira got indicted. There is a way out of that indictment for Carlos de Oliveira. Only Carlos de Oliveira can tell prosecutors about the single most important conversation mentioned in the superseding indictment. The day after Donald Trump found out that federal prosecutors were getting a subpoena for the security camera footage. The indictment says on June 23rd, 2022 at 8:46 p.m., Trump called de Oliveira and they spoke for approximately 24 minutes. Co-defendant de Oliveira can walk out of this case tonight if he tells Jack Smith every word that he remembers from those 24 minutes. Carlos de Oliveira made his first trip to federal court today for a 10-minute appearance before a magistrate judge who released him on a $100,000 bond that did not actually require him to put up any money for that release. The judge gave de Oliveira the standard restrictions for defendants in the Southern District of Florida to not speak to any witnesses in the case and to not leave the Southern District of Florida, conditions that do not apply to the very favorable special treatment his co-defendant Donald Trump is getting. Trump employee 4, Yuscil Taveras, watched the television coverage of his co-worker, Carlos de Oliveira, getting arrested today from the comfort of his home, presumably, knowing that he will be the star witness against Carlos de Oliveira, Walt Nauta, and Donald Trump, the only possible witness in the case, based on the evidence that we now know, who could give even more devastating testimony than Trump employee 4 is Carlos de Oliveira, if he chooses to tell the truth about those 24 minutes on the phone with Donald Trump, the phone call during which prosecutors believe Carlos de Oliveira chose to join a criminal conspiracy with Donald Trump. Carlos de Oliveira showed up in court today with a lawyer paid for by Donald Trump, the first possible external sign that Carlos de Oliveira changes his mind about which side he's on would be changing lawyers. That's what Trump employee 4, Yuscil Taveras, did before he decided to speak with Jack Smith's investigators. He got a target letter after watching Donald Trump and Walt Nauta march into court to get arrested, and the very first thing he did was change lawyers. Yuscil Taveras dumped the lawyer Donald Trump was paying for, got another lawyer, and then apparently cooperated with Jack Smith. And when the next indictment came out, Yuscil Taveras was not a co-defendant, but his story was told in full in the new indictment, a story that prosecutors could only get from him, their current star witness, Trump employee 4. Carlos de Oliveira is 56 years old. With good health, he has at least 30 years of an active life ahead of him. He has to ask himself tonight, how many of those years is he prepared to spend in federal prison for Donald Trump? He has to ask himself tonight, will 77-year-old Donald Trump take care of him financially for the next 30 years? Will Donald Trump's children continue to financially support him after Donald Trump is gone? And Donald Trump has to ask himself tonight, how long can he count on Carlos de Oliveira when Trump employee 4, Yuscil Taveras, has already shown Carlos de Oliveira and all other Trump employees the safest way to react to a target letter from Jack Smith? Carlos de Oliveira came to this country from Portugal. He has worked at Mar-a-Lago for approximately 20 years. CNN is reporting that members of his family, quote, couldn't even sleep last night with all that's going on. De Oliveira's family was pretty certain that he did not realize the consequences of what Trump was telling him to do when he asked him to delete the security footage, and that given his lack of money, de Oliveira was probably just doing anything that Trump told him to do. He isn't familiar with how the government here works, and he was probably just being loyal to his boss who was paying his bills, the person told CNN. The family feels like he got trapped. Trump employee 4, Yuscil Taveras, has shown Carlos de Oliveira the way out of that trap. Get rid of the Trump lawyer and tell Jack Smith all about that 24-minute phone call with criminal defendant Donald Trump.